An alternate world scenario. What if the USA was an island continent like Australia? Australia is the only island continent in the world. Being the only island continent in the world, Australia is a very unique continent with a very unique amount of life. South America, by effect, would also be an island continent, with also Panama and these parts of the world as well. This area would also be an island area as well. A lot of the old world animals would have never gone to Yale as the Bering Strait does not exist. We removed Alaska from the equation. So, for example, elephants and many fauna from the Afro-Eurasia world would have never came in. So there would be no big cats, no elephants as well. Primates would have still been able to gone from the old world to new world via rafts, alongside rodents as well. Rodents and primates would still exist in South America and North America as well. Or the island continent of America. The thing is, evolution is very strange. Dogs were still evolved in North America, as they evolved in Texas, alongside horses and camels. Rhinos would have also evolved as well, and ungulates would have been the largest group of animals. These animals, however, would never have gone to the old world. There was no Bering Strait in this world. The Bering Strait would exist as an area, but there would still been miles of ocean between the Bering Strait and this area, even though, what about during the Ice Age? Well, there would have been a giant glacier blocking animals from entering during the Ice Age, including humans as well. Humans would have never discovered the North American continent. Also, considering the fact that canines never made it to the old world alongside horses, there would have never been domesticated dogs or horses. They would have been stuck to the old world. There was a possibility that canids could have made it to South America via rafts, but it's very unlikely. North America's megafauna would have never gone extinct, with various ungulates in the grasslands of the north, including various rhino-like animals, horses, and pronghorn-like animals as well. Considering the pronghorns evolved in North America and are not related to the antelopes of the old world as well. Also, in the more southern regions, you have had the evolution of giant reptilians that would have been apex predators, much like the alligator today. Giant snakes in places like Florida and Texas. You have had giant lizards as well, but most of them, but temperature would really have restricted the geography as well, and also animals would have had to adapt to a more colder area. For example, the giant reptilians of the south would probably burrowed underground during cold snaps. This would have been essential for survival for giant lizards in this part of the area. Meanwhile, in this drier part of the US, it would have been much more easier. Meanwhile, the more forested area would have been home to various ungulates that are adapted for more forested environments. Expect more bulky animals very similar to cattle to arise in this portion of the area. And fill in niches here. Rodents and marsupials were filled many of the small animal niches. Heck, there's a possibility that megafaunal opossums as predators could also arise in this area, considering that canids are the only predators here, and considering that the Ice Age North America could support bears, giant cats, and like the saber-toothed tiger, or no, not saber-toothed cat, that's the more correct term, and giant wolves, it is very likely that dire wolves would have been the top predator across the continent. Animals like giant beavers would also evolve as well in North America. What about Newfoundland? Well, Newfoundland will have a biogeography very similar to New Zealand. Considering the fact that birds would be the most of the fauna on these islands, it is very likely very similar to New Zealand, being very isolated alongside Greenland, which means unless humans introduce animals to these areas, the flora and fauna of these islands in Greenland would be very similar to Iceland. and it'll be mostly inhabited by birds. Birds will be mostly the sole inhabitants of here. There will be no polar bears in the Arctic as well. Polar bears will probably have still been found in Russia, but there will be no polar bears in North America. There is a possibility that polar bears could be here simply by swimming here, as polar bears, during the ice age, which means polar bears and other ice age megafauna, and there'll probably be some Arctic adapted megafauna in this portion of the area, as well adapted for the Arctic climate. That's here. What about South America? South America's evolutionary history will probably mostly been the same, as South America was mostly just isolated from the rest of the world. A lot of South America's megafauna will eventually, crossed over to Central America and dominated there. Terror birds would still largely be the top predators of South America, alongside of giant reptiles as well, being the ruler of the mammals of South America. South America would still have considering that humans never took this area, there would still be giant sloths and giant armadillos in South America, alongside other unique craids. I do think unique craids and unique groups of animals would have evolved in South America. This is pretty likely as well, given the fact that, North America is a very isolated area, or the modern U.S. area as well. Well, now the question is the Caribbean. The Caribbean will probably have dwarf giant ground sloths. I do think Synuefians would have made their way towards North America eventually. Around 10 to 5 million years ago, I think Synuefians would have made it to North America, including armadillos and giant sloths, and diversified, meaning that giant ground sloths would have existed in North America, considering the fact that they also have their presence on the Caribbean. I would expect that ground sloths, would have somehow found their way towards the mainland North American continent. These dwarf ground sloths around that time will realize that this is a much bigger area. And same thing with armadillos. And there were also big Riptodonts and giant ground sloths, like the old North American Zetuses as well. What would happen when humans discovered it? Well, as the case of megafauna in Australia and New Zealand, expect a lot of it to disappear. I do expect there to be varying amount of ground sloths in the North American continent. I don't expect them to go extinct, and many of the western ground sloths to be still around. I do expect horses and dogs to be domesticated way later, considering that horses and dogs and camels have never been found here, which have been made things much more difficult. No horses, no dogs, and no camels would have existed. Africa, the old world's megafauna would have been much more different than it is now. Considering the fact that there were no horses, no dogs, no rhinos, and there are no, and also tapirs would also exist in this portion of the Americas, and probably would have made the way island hopping to South America. There was a possibility that ungulates are separated by land masses. For example, horses and animals related to horses would be found here. Meanwhile, gazelles, deers, and other ungulates would be found here, like, hippos and stuff. They would have been found in the old world. That means that of course, they will probably be still referred to by the number of toes they have, but there would be a massive isolation of both ungulate craids, as well, that they could also be referred to as Old World and New World ungulates altogether. The Old World ungulates would be like deer, goats, and stuff, cows, cattle, those groups of animals dominated this part of the world. As well, the further beasts will have got extinct as well, with the last remnants being in North America, with large rhino-like animals becoming the dominant herbivores as well. Well, and given the fact there's no elephants, they will evolve similar nieces to elephants in the old world. Giant ground sloths will evolve the similar niece as giraffes do in the old world. This world will be very strange. I would expect like the Vikings to discover Newfoundland and settle this area. Very similar to New Zealand and Madagascar. Expect the giant birds and giant rodents to go extinct. And of course the bats that lived on the island, as bats will have been found across the world. The giant birds will have gone extinct alongside the giant rodents because of overhunting. And because that it wasn't a large continent. But I expect the Vikings to also eventually discover Maine, considering the fact that there was no Bering Strait, which means humans will have never gone to the continent. Basically, since then, the Vikings would have established the old colonies here. Most of the religious practice would be mostly Norse religions for the next 1,000 years. Megafauna will have also taken a hit in New England, and various species, except many of the smaller species, will have gone extinct as well. The dogs will have also been domesticated first alongside horses and brought back to the old world. In this timeline, there was never the conquistadors discovering North America first. It would have been the Vikings. The Vikings would have tamed the animals like the dog as well as the horse. The Vikings would have discovered many of the coastal areas, scattered to go into the more forested interior as well. This is when the British and Spanish discover, but the Spanish will have still discovered South America alongside the Portuguese. The Portuguese would conquer this portion of South America, meanwhile the Spanish would get the rest, creating the modern-day nations of Brazil and New Spain. Spain at the very beginning. The French will have discovered this portion here, and the English will discover. The Vikings will have already discovered these very useless islands, but also the English will probably discover here, and discover that these areas have already been conquered, as well. Here, but the English will have seen another portion of the island continent here. Yeah. The Spanish will have discovered the southern portion of the area here, but the English will have discovered this portion of the Americas, leaving this area to be basically divided between the rest of the people. The question is, would the Polynesians discover America? I think, considering it took them so long to discover Hawaii, I think they will probably discover North America around the same time as the Spaniards. So there would have been a small Polynesian influence as well. Culturally, the American continents would be very, very similar to the modern day areas. Yes. There would have still been slavery brought in from Africa to mostly South America and the Caribbean. South America would also have a large African influence as well, alongside the Caribbean as well. Expect the demographics to still reflect modern days. For example, Brazil, where there's still a lot of descendants of slaves from Africa, and there are still a lot of descendants from European peoples. Considering the fact that Native Americans never existed, considering the fact that the Bering Strait does not exist, it is now just the Bering Sea, expect basically modern day the USA here. The southern portions of the continent will be more. This portion of the continent will be more Norse area, and would eventually convert to Christianity. Meanwhile, this area, the Spanish area, will be more Afro-influenced, more influenced by African cultures. This area will be mostly like English culture as well, and this area will be mostly French culture. These areas will probably be in the intermediate as well. Now we're in the 1900s. These nations formed. What now? Well, South America will likely form into even smaller nations like in the real life. So expect a Venezuela-like nation to exist, Also, the Guyanas will have been colonized by other countries as well. And also, Argentina and Chile will still be separate nations alongside Bolivia, Peru as well. And most of these countries are mostly ethnically Spanish, and African in the makeup. Consider the fact that, the no Bering Land Strait, the borders of South America will look very similar to our borders today as well. The borders of Central America will just be one whole country. And actually, there could be separate colonizations, but I expect Central America to be balkanized into several countries like it is today. France will still control Haiti, which means it will be a more French-influenced area. This will have been the modern-day Latin America. Modern-day Latin America. These will be Spanish-speaking nations. Which were broken apart simply by the way Spain colonized. Also, France will eventually took over Louisiana. These areas would have been influenced by the French. This area would have been influenced by the Vikings. Here. These areas will kind of be like neutral states. They will have these areas will kind of be like multicultural areas. And this area will be largely influenced by English settlement. Same thing of Belize and same thing of here. What about the Dutch? What role could the Dutch have played in this? Well, there could probably be multiple Dutch colonies as well. I think the Dutch will colonize various areas. And actually, there could be also small Dutch colonies as well. Given a small Dutch-speaking country in California, not impossible. Well, as well. The Dutch will also have created colonies in South America as well. And it will be majority Dutch people as well. Given the fact that the Dutch were trying to find there will be several Dutch-speaking countries in South America as well. Also, the Vikings already have the colonies here. It will mostly consist of Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish people, and Finnish people as well. The continent will be mostly Christian as well. In every area as well. These islands will be mostly uninhabited, but the ones that are will be mostly influenced by the Vikings. Now the 1950s has passed and World War II has passed. Like in the modern timeline, these countries would probably open the world up to immigration around the world, including Asia and Africa. Considering the fact that South America has already, with the exception of these countries, especially these countries in the middle, have a large Afro influence as well. African immigration will be pretty high in these areas, in a large Afro influence areas, and also there will be a large amount of immigration from Asia as well, and also Australia. Yeah. Australia. Expect in this coastal area a lot of Asian immigrants in this area. Yeah. Expect the more French areas to be more racially homogenous. And these kind of like neutral states will kind of stay the same. There won't be a lot of slavery in this area. Yeah, here, as mostly the slavery was brought in by the Spanish Empire. There will probably be immigrants from the more Spanish, Afro-influenced countries here to these nations as well. Especially the two already more culturally diverse countries as well. This English area here would also be more Spanish influenced, and may become a part of Latin America in the future. So here, the Caribbean will still mostly be Afro dominated, and the forwarded area will also have a large mix of Caribbean cultures as well. So yeah, this is the culture map mode as well. Eventually, we're also gonna make a map for the Caribbean cultures as well. We're gonna be using a light blue for here. But the languages will mostly be European languages, with the English-speaking areas being the largest portion of here. The English areas will still be mostly underpopulated. Considering the fact that this area is very underpopulated today, despite there will probably be large populated coastal cities here, alongside here, and here. By population, the modern-day nation of Brazil would be the largest. So around a modern population of here, this country here, which is a mostly Nordic country, will be around 147 million. Considering the refugee crisis into Europe, there is a large portion of Nordic people moving to the Norse nation. The Norse nation will mostly be Norse people, with a small minority of Caribbean peoples, mostly Afro-Caribbean people, and Spanish Caribbean people as well. Expect the second largest languages in many of these nations to be other European languages. For example, Spanish will be the second largest language in a lot of these countries. This area will be kind of a weird area, but I expect this area to be more of an Anglophone area, as well, with a large Spanish and French minority. Same thing with here will probably be a large Norse area, will be a Norse country with a large Spanish and Anglo minority. And also a large Spanish minority as well. And Afro minority. Expect the North American region to be a very multicultural nation area like it is today. As well. In 2022, the Americas are considered some of the most prosperous continents in the world. There are some development issues with this portion of the area, mostly due kind of like how it is in the South with racial conflict as well. Instead of this portion of the area being kind of how it is, it will kind of be like in the central portion of South America. These areas will have a shameful racial past, kind of like with the southern U.S., and segregation will be common until the 1970s, as well in this more southern portion of the area. Mostly modern-day Brazil, Chile, and Bolivia as well. Also during the 1900s, there will be a large-scale immigration from Italy, Ireland, mostly to the English and Norse-speaking regions, and French-speaking regions, and during the 1930s, large-scale immigration of Jews and Poles, Russians, and of course Germans to these areas, further complicating the ethnic makeup of these areas. So, just like with Spaniards, there will also be a minority of Germans in these areas, and a minority of Irish in the Spanish areas, along with Germans and Italians and French. Eventually, these areas will have their own ethnicities. For example, these Norse ethnicities will be their own ethnicities. Kind of like with the French will probably merge with many of the Spanish, Portuguese, German, Italian, Polish, and Russian, Ukrainian, Jewish, and even Turkish and Middle Eastern minorities as well. The North American countries will have a higher overall GDP per capita than the South American cohorts as well. Kind of like how it is in real life. And also considering the fact that most immigrants have to make their way by boat, there won't be like a massive, amount of people coming here unless it's by boat as well. But both the American continents will kind of be closely connected either way in the future as well. So what do you think of this alternate world, of the alternate North American continent? Do you think the idea of the USA being isolated from the rest of the world, kind of like how South America was? And do you think that the Chinese or other groups will discover the continent first? I do love to know your opinion down in below.